last time I did coverage with you guys, kind of highlight just a little bit about this. And I just want to talk about this for a brief moment. Again, from this guy, Ryoshi. Dr. Craig Wright and Shane have been granted the patent for blockchain enforced smart contracts. Now, last time you guys tuned in, you're going to be like, well, why mention it again? Again, as a reminder, especially for people that didn't see that information. Look at the quote. It should be noted that the invention is not limited to use with Bitcoin, blockchain, and alternative blockchain implementations fall within the scope of the invention, but status active anticipated expiration is February 16th of 2037. And of course, references this particular link. We shared it before on that particular Google patent link. Okay. Show some of his pictures. You know, there it is. If you go to Google patents, registry, and automated management method for blockchain and for smart contracts, it's all there, right? So my thing that I want to get more into, and, you know, I don't think there's anything wrong with basically doing this and so on, is I want you guys to understand some of the significance in regards to some of this stuff. So you got to keep in mind, okay, Dr. Craig Wright, basically, of N-Chain. You know, some of you guys know about N-Chain, some of you don't, but him being granted these specific, you know, patent for blockchain and for smart contracts, for you and me and so on, everybody, especially people that don't even hold BSV, right? But I would also say specifically BSV holders, what is the significance of all this, right? Well, keep in mind that Dr. Craig Wright and his company, N-Chain, have been granted, of course, these patents for blockchain and for smart contracts by who? The European Union Patent Office, which is called the EPO. Now, the patent is titled, the specific one that I want to get into, Method and System for Deterministic Key Generation for Blockchain Enforced Contracts. Now, so for some or most of us, this seems Greek. Max, why even mention it? Well, there's a reason. And the reason I want to get into this is, while there's a whole grocery list of specific patents that Dr. Craig Wright has invented, you got to keep in mind this specific patent is significant, of course, for a number of reasons. First, let's get into this. It is the first patent to be granted for blockchain enforced, of course, smart contracts, right? This means that N-Chain has the, and this is the magic moment for you, the exclusive right to use this tech in Europe for a period, of course, of 20 years, hence why you saw that expiration date. Second, the patent covers a number of important features for blockchain and for smart contracts, and they include basically three main things I want to outline for you. And that is, of course, the use of deterministic key generation, like we mentioned, to create unique keys for each smart contract, the use of multi-signature wallets to ensure the security of those smart contracts. And number three, the use of oracles to provide external data to smart contracts. Now, in regards to the whole thing about oracles, we know that this is where you get a lot of the talk of BSV is the best out there when it comes to something that most people don't realize, and that is they can very well be part of your typical cross-border payments up there with the likes of Ripple's XRP, Stellar, and so on. Now, I'm still going to be diversified in those things, and I know there's a lot of BSV maxis out there saying, no, you're wasting your time, go all out BSV and so on. Hey, I understand that, but at the same time, I also want to catch some of these runs in the future and so on, and I also believe that a lot of these are going to be part of the mix. We can agree to disagree, but again, that part of the use of oracles to provide external data to the smart contracts is that, you know, plug, connect to the crazy broader scheme of things of, you know, payments and cross-border payments and so on. Now, let's get back to this for a second. Again, some of my notes and so on. These features are essential for the development of secure and reliable blockchain enforced smart contracts. True. Third, the patents grant is a major validation, of course, of N-Chain's work, specifically Dr. Craig Wright, You have Dr. Ladid, but it's in the field of blockchain tech, and it's also significant in regards to the boost of BSV itself, which of course N-Chain, as we know, supports. Now, back to this topic of us, the retail holders and so on. A lot of times we feel like we get left behind. What will it do for BSV holders? I'd be asking that all day long. The patent grant is expected to have a number, of course, of positive benefits for us. First, it will help to drive the development of new and innovative applications for BSV. Now, I always pointed out that, when it comes to, applications or dApps and so on, when we talk about having a thriving ecosystem, that's the pathway forward. It will also help increase security and reliability, of course, of BSV transactions, like I was mentioning before. Third, it will help attract new investors and businesses to the BSV ecosystem. So it's a win all the way for retail, all across the board. Overall, you got to keep in mind the patent grant is a major win for N-Chain, and also, of course, us as the BSV community. It is a clear sign that N-Chain itself is a leader in the field of blockchain tech, and that BSV is the future of blockchain. Now, when I went over to the BSV site, I did know some really cool things. Like, you can sign up to be part of the academy. You can take courses, right? And it lets you know how long these courses are and so on. I won't be able to jump into just yet, because in the future, when things become more normalized for me personally, I'll have a lot more time to do that, where I can concentrate more. But it is something that's part of my list to do. I'd love to hear from you guys who are big BSV proponents. Have you already done this? And if so, what have you gathered from it? Do you like the experience? Do you like what you've learned? Is it easy to learn? All right, real quick, some details about the specific patent. The patent application was filed on January 24th, 2018, and it was, of course, granted on June 21st of 2023. Again, this is back to the whole topic of what we were mentioning in regards to this deterministic key generation. So basically, the patent number is called EP325719-1B1 if you want to nerd it out. I want to now take you over to this bio from Craig Wright. I'm not going to read all of it, but I want to jump into some specific things about it. So what's impressive to me when I went over here, just jumping more down into it, is this real quick. And sorry, I was doing some work earlier, and I think I brushed up on some pollen from the outside tree. So if you see me kind of scratching a lot, that's what's going on. But yes, CraigWright.net is the site. And jumping down to this, what was so impressive to me is Dr. Wright has more than 25 years experience in the fields of information tech and security. Been a lecturer and researcher in computer science, Charles Sturt University, authored many articles, academic papers, books, conferences, you name it, right? One of the most highly qualified digital forensic practitioners in the world is Dr. Wright. Personally conducted in excess of 1,200 engagements related to IT security for more than 120 Australian and international organizations in the private and government sectors, including 15 Commonwealth states. Dr. Wright has held senior executive positions with companies focused on digital currency, digital forensics, my God, and IT security. Among his positions, he was the vice president of Center for Strategic Cyberspace and Security Science, which is CSCSS. He had a focus on collaborating with government bodies and securing cyber systems. So as you guys know, I've done oh my gosh, like probably hundreds, maybe even 1,000 videos on quant at this point. And with an emphasis on Gilbert Verdian and his background, but let's face it, Verdian tied into not just Australia, but especially, the UK. He was part of the Digital Pound Foundation. We give him credit where credit's due. But notice how some of these big proponents, when it comes to blockchain and DLT, they have some kind of connection to the government at some point. Enter in Dr. Craig Wright. Dr. Wright worked on systems that protected Australian Stock Exchange. He trained Australian government, corporate departments, SCADA security, cyber warfare. My God, cyber defense. Interesting. Even when we do talk about JASMY, notice that Taro Kono is what? A former defense minister, right? Part of that defense ministry. Kind of crazy how all these guys that know so much about blockchain and DLT have that common thing with them. Maybe it's a coincidence. I don't know. I don't think so. But one of Dr. Wright, early sector focuses was that he helped design the architecture of the first online casino and advised Centribet on security and control systems. Now, I don't talk about the Wink token much, right? It's built on Tron, but for me, two key things I have from Tron, of course, is BTT and Wink. So, some people just call it the Wink token. I always call it Wink. But the reason why I spent like roughly $1,000 on Wink, a couple years ago, was the whole idea of the tokenization of casinos. And if anything, I'm still going to sit on it and so on. It's been a long-term play, but it's interesting to even see somebody like Dr. Craig Wright have the architecture for the world's first online casino. And of course, that's online in Australia. Anyway, many of Dr. Craig Wright's findings and publications and research continue to be presented at academic and business conferences, articles of which explain some of the groundbreaking inventions and concepts. It says can be found here. I want to take you to some of these key things in a bit, but before I do that, I want to explain to you guys, back to this topic of the specific patent. Why is deterministic key generation to create unique keys for each smart contract significant? I want you guys to think outside the box, like I've always mentioned. I want to state this. There comes a time, not in every man's place, but there comes a time with all technology, doesn't matter if it's blockchain, DLT, but just technology in general, where you will see the shift of going without, going from the old entering into the new. As we know, Ethereum is the, like the McDonald's of smart contracts. There's more Ethereum smart contracts than anything else out there. Doesn't mean that just because it's like a Chinese buffet that you're getting the best just because you're getting most quantity. If anything, pay attention to the ones that create great quality, right? The gourmet of blockchain, if you will, if you want to use that analogy. What I want you guys to understand is when we get more into this outline tonight, and it's quite the outline, and it'll be chopped up later, you need to understand that there's so much talk about the ones that are threats to likes of Ethereum, and there's a whole bunch, right? Like we put so much emphasis on Stellar even, especially when it comes to Sorobon. BSV definitely needs to get the honorable mention, and I'm going to outline for you guys tonight why that is, and if anything, maybe you take a little bit more serious, and I'm not giving you financial advice, I'm just providing you information, but if it was me personally, and this is my own, immediate family, I don't have any immediate family, it's just my dad, but if there was, I would be telling them, look, are you into meme tokens? If they said, yeah, be like, well, if you have money to waste on that, why don't you have money to at least give this a chance? Now, hear me out. So, these unique keys for smart contracts offer significant benefits. This is where we're going to bring in the whole thing of how can this be a threat to Ethereum? Number one, reproducibility. Deterministic key generation. That's kind of hard for me to say. Ensures that the same seed, listen to this for a second, will always produce the same key. This allows devs and users to confidently reproduce the deployment process, facilitating testing, debugging, and of course audits. Haven't we seen things very similar in other key projects, especially when it comes to Stellar with Sorobon? Yes. Right, security. Let's talk about this for a second, because at the end of the day, you can have all the boasted fast utility in the world, but if you don't have much security, you're sunk. By eliminating randomness in this specific patent created by Dr. Craig Wright in key generation, potential vulnerabilities associated with unpredictable factors are, of course, reduced. This makes it harder for attackers to exploit weakness in the key generation process. Now let's pause there for just a brief moment and put some emphasis on this. What is one of the main things that BTC maxis go after BSV maxis and proponents like myself? They have pointed out time and time again that you're not going to get that mass adoption. You're not going to get that trust that BTC has. And I will give credit where credit's due. BTC currently holds that trust, slow, outdated tech. But this specific patent that Dr. Craig Wright invented does in fact make it harder for attackers to exploit the weakness in the key generation process. So if that is now solved because he has this specific patent, what does that do as far as more of that confidence? And how do we instill more of that mass adoption? Well, we have to get some of the bigger institutions involved, and we could get some other people involved, et cetera, et cetera. But it's worth pointing out. Three more things I want to get into. We're going to have cross-chain compatibility. A lot of you guys are into Cosmos. We're talking about all those cross-chain swaps and so on, right? Very cool stuff. Were you aware BSV also has that? Deterministic addresses generated using what they call create2 can be replicated across different networks. Listen to this. It allows smart contracts to interact with each other seamlessly across different blockchains, enhancing interoperability. You guys know me. I'm always talking about interoperability. You probably get tired of me talking about it. And it opens up new possibilities for decentralized applications. This has really caught my attention. All right. You have the greatest decentralized applications out there and boast it. But are you going to have an improved user experience for all these people using these apps and have it built on BSV? The answer is yes. Deterministic key generation simplifies the process of managing and recovering keys for multiple smart contracts. Interesting. Who was boasting that if you lost some of these things, that they would have an answer? Hedera. Remember the whole thing of what they want to accomplish for the future? Lost seed phrases and so on. So now you don't just have Hedera, you have, for instance, BSV with what N-Chain is trying to do, Dr. Craig Wright, and so on. Users like you and me can easily derive child keys from a single seed, eliminating the need to manage numerous private keys. How was this all brought together? Through these exclusive patents created by Dr. Craig Wright. How about this for a second? How about efficient resource utilization? Now, I took more of a deeper look into this. Deterministic key generation reduces the need for on-chain storage, listen to this, of private keys. This can save significant gas costs. So yeah, goodbye Ethereum, and improve the overall scalability of smart contracts. Now, I will give an honorable mention to Casper. Casper, not Caspa. I do like Caspa, don't get it wrong. But with Casper, the head lady, CEO in charge, right? You know who she is. I can't pronounce her name offhand. So many names out there. But one thing I loved about Casper was being able to bring in all these contracts from Ethereum and, if anything, not hit people up with these crazy gas fees, right? Well, what about BSV? Yeah, because of these patents. So being able to save significant gas costs, improve overall scalability of smart contracts. So being able to have these guys, if they wanted to, these devs come on over to BSV, plug in these smart contracts and say, hey, who's part of your ecosystem? Is Ethereum? Hey, guess what? No problem. Because not only can we scale, which is huge, but we are going to save significant gas costs. Why would they stay with Ethereum? All right. I know it's a lot to get into, but this is such good stuff. And I spent a decent amount of time earlier to get into this. You're going to have enhanced transparency in regards to this. Deterministic key generation can improve the transparency of smart contracts, and it's going to make it easier to verify the authenticity and origin, of course, of the contract. This is especially important for smart contracts. It handles sensitive information, of course, in regards to the transactions. Now, there's, of course, more things about this, enables advanced functionalities, all this good stuff. There's also simplifying governance. But this last part I want to jump into for you before we kick it over to some specific patents. You got to keep in mind, deterministic key generation, which is a mouthful, enables the verification of computation. Can be used to implement verifiable computation protocols, allows users to verify the correctness, computations performed by smart contracts without revealing the underlying data. So not giving too much away, keeping things more safe. This can be valuable, of course, for applications such as securing voting systems or financial audits. Telling you flat out in the future, this whole concept that we've been talking about, voter fraud and so on, could BSV, and we've seen other ones trying to say like I think Hedera also. So could it be Hedera, BSV, maybe both? Create a solution that would end the whole thing of voter fraud. That would be a game changer, whether you're Democrat, Republican, independent like myself. In conclusion, I want you to take this away before we get into this next part about BSV. Deterministic key generation offers numerous advantages for smart contracts specifically. It's going to make it a valuable tool for devs and users alike. Also, it's going to leverage by creating benefits for developers can easily create more secure, reliable, and interoperable smart contracts that can unlock the full potential of the blockchain tech. Now we're going to take a pause, get back in the comments. The next part of what we have for BSV, we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty in regards to the Justia patents. As we know, Justia patents is a site that we reference, especially when it comes to, JASMY. But there's some few specific recent patents that were filed on October 12th of 2021, but were published. How soon? Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th, just a few days ago. Stay tuned for that. You're going to want to hear some of this juicy stuff, in my opinion. These patents, let's jump into it. So you guys are already familiar with this, especially when it comes to JASMY coverage. This is the Justia patents, and this is in regards to the patents by inventor Craig Stephen Wright. Has filed for patents to protect the following inventions. The list includes, of course, patent applications that are pending, as well as patents that have already been granted by the United States Patent and Trademark Office, which is called the USPTO. All right, I'm just going to show just a few key things here. I was going to talk about the one that was filed all the way back in October of 2021. Check this out. Publication date. This is some of that juicy stuff. This one was actually published December 7th, 2023. And in that abstract is this Merkle proof entity. Well, some of you guys, of course, know about Merkle proof. I'm not going to get into all these specific things. But in the abstract, it says it's a computer-implemented method of providing proof that a data item of a blockchain transaction exists, of course, on blockchain, wherein the method comprises obtaining from a requested party, all sorts of technical stuff, right? The corresponding target Merkle root is contained with a block of the blockchain where obtaining the target Merkle proof comprises calculating an index of target transaction identifier of the target blockchain transaction with a leaf layer of a corresponding Merkle tree and outputting at least the target Merkle proof for use by requested party, all this stuff, right? Yeah, some of the inventors here. And of course, you see Dr. Craig Stephen Wright. In regards to him specifically and only him, there's this other one that was filed all the way back in August 29th of 2022. And basically, data patent is now December 5th. So not that long ago. Assignee N. Shane, okay? Inventor, Craig Stephen Wright. You have all these other ones, specifically. But look how many times you see all these ones. You had grants. When they were filed, January 10th, 2019. Interesting. That's a big, big day, if you guys remember that one. I won't get into the nitty-gritty, but if you've been following BSV, you know about that. Look at this. Data patent, recent, December 5th, 2023. Look at this other one. Merkle proof entity, November 30th, 2023. Craig Stephen Wright. Again, I'm not going to read all this because I don't want to bore you too much with it because some of it kind of, let's face it, gets a little dry, right? Challenge response protocol based on physically unclonable functions. This is interesting. Computer implemented method comprising of more than one instances of challenge response mapping operation. Again, some of that technical stuff. Owners, Jack Owen Davies, Craig Stephen Wright. Originally filed August 31st, 2021. Publication date, November 23rd, 2023. So, I mean, it's consistently recent, right? Look at all this. Boom. Boom. A little bit more about this. See that? Lots of good consistency here. All here. Consistently. Time and time again. Right? How about this one? This token system. Validated token transaction can be tracked back to the token mint transaction. I mean, if anything, I do know this much, being able to see if somebody's being sinister or not, right? If this guy is such a bad guy, why do we go through all the trouble of making specific patents where we can validate to see where the transaction can be tracked back to the original token minting? Just throwing that out there. All right, so there's so much there, consistently there, right? All right, I think I gave a good example. Now, in my own notes, basically, and also for you guys, because if anything, you kind of want to, old Max, to put it in layman's terms. So Dr. Craig Wright of the Bitcoin Association, of course, has many patents. I would be asking which ones are the most significant and why do they matter, of course, to BSV holders. I want you to keep in mind this. Dr. Craig Wright, as we know, is the self-proclaimed Satoshi Nakamoto and chief scientist of nChain. Holds a vast number of patents related to blockchain tech. And even though we went through that specific list, keep in mind that while the exact number is fluid, like, nobody knows the exact amount. I mean, I guess you could count it one by one. No, I'm not going to do that. Not like the last guy who's going to read the top 300 for no reason. All right, I'll stop. Anyway, estimates range from 800 granted patents to nearly 4,000 total patents from Dr. Craig Wright. Wow. I mean, even if you think this guy's fake Toshi, wow. And of course, this includes some pending applications. These patents cover a wide range of blockchain apps, and they do include, listen to this, scalability and transaction processing. Now, for whatever reason, when I talk about BSV lately, our brother Cool Cat is not here in attendance. That's okay. He can watch the chopped up version. But I want you to pay attention to these three key patents because there's a grocery list, there's ones that stand out, and there's ones that don't. Let's talk about the ones that stand out. If you appreciate the BSV coverage tonight, smash the like. Please make sure that you're subbed. If anything, share it with some of the other BSV blockchain enthusiasts, whether you're a maxi or not. Right? Don't shoot the messenger, though. Patent US 2019-089-10481. This is a method for scaling a blockchain network through a two-tier architecture with an off-chain ledger for high volume transactions. Do you not understand where we're going with that one? I think you do. How about this other one? Patent US 2019-027-931A1. A method for parallel transaction processing on a blockchain network to increase throughput. Ooh, I think I understand that one. How about this third one? Patent US 2019-089-101A1. It's a method for handling micropayments on a blockchain network using a micropayment channel. Now, why would old Max mention that one specifically? Been following anything about Michael Saylor? What does he boast all the time about? Micropayments. Interesting. What about the one that has real true scalability? Now, some people say, well, it's Lightning Network, and they already have that. Look more into that whole thing of the Lightning Network and see how well that's working out for the people that are proponents of that. Do you see Elon Musk getting all gung-ho and on board for the Lightning Network? No. He's made it pretty much public that he thinks Lightning Network is pretty much like an epic fail. But what about BSV? Now, you got to keep in mind, while these patents are significant, of course, to us as in BSV holders, they address scalability challenges, true, that are hindering the widespread adoption of Bitcoin as a global payment system. Bitcoin, as in BTC, as a global payment system. But what about BSV as a global payment system? If anything, this is why I am now going to add more and DCA more into BSV, because I do think that behind the scenes, they have a seat at the table when it comes to the new monetary system. Hear this out. If these technologies are implemented, BSV could very well potentially process, and back to Satoshi, I will tag you, my friend, and we'll have to do a collaboration again. BSV could potentially process millions. That's right, you read it, you heard it. Millions of transactions per second, making it a viable alternative to the traditional payment networks. Now, Satoshi, I know you're going to say, we can even do trillions. That's amazing. But in reality, even hundreds of thousands compared to, and don't get me wrong, I'm not going to dump my Ripple XRP or Stellar. I know some of you BSV maxis don't like hearing that because I like being diversified. I do want to earn money, and I want to earn money at different times, and some things pop off at different times. I think we can agree to that. But this isn't hundreds of thousands of TPS. So for BSV to process millions of transactions per second, making it viable alternative to traditional payment networks such as your Visas and MasterCards, that is game changer tech. Now, we're going to talk about 3 specific security and privacy patents. Listen to this, because if we don't have security and privacy, we don't have squat. And you guys know, when it comes to privacy, cover and talk about JASMY, talk your ear off about it. We do have some JASMY coverage. But listen to this. Patent US 1087484-2B2, as B as in Bob, is a method for securing a blockchain network using a multi-signature scheme. Back to the what? The patent that basically was approved for Dr. Stephen Wright. How about this? Patent US 9743011B2. It's a method for anonymizing transactions on a blockchain network using ring signatures. No, not the Ring doorbell, but that might be another deep dive to get into. Don't have it available tonight, but it's interesting. Now, this third one for security and privacy, US 202-00114488A1. It's a method, listen to this, for preventing double spending on a blockchain network using a time-based lock. Did we not talk about this? I think we did. Remember that one we talked about where, you can't have a situation where people are paying double. I think I talked about that last week. I don't know if there's anybody, you could drop in the comments if you remember me talking about that. Because I said, nobody wants to pay double for anything. So do you have something, a patent to prevent that? Yeah, you do. It's that specific one. Interesting. Now, back to the topic at hand. These patents. They are important for us as in BSV holders because they enhance the security and privacy of course, the network. This is crucial for ensuring trust and confidence, of course, in the platform. And most importantly, as this is adopted as in BSV for businesses and individuals for sensitive transactions. We got to get into the next part. Smart contracts. This is a threat to Ethereum big time. Because what if, you can have literally no reason for anybody to use Ethereum ever again. Hear me out. Patent US 2019-088998A1 is a method for creating and executing smart contracts on a blockchain network. This other one, which is US 2019-08905 4A as an Apple 1, is a method for enforcing smart contracts on a blockchain network using a blockchain oracle. Interesting. Well, you know where we're going with that for cross-border payments and so on. You know, you got to keep in mind, this is where a lot of people feel up. Well, Chainlink stands out, right? Right. BSV is sitting at the table, maybe in secrecy. Maybe just most people don't know it, but they're definitely sitting at the table for cross-border payments. Number 3, in regards to smart contracts, this might be the biggest one. Patent US 2019-08905-2A1. It's a method for providing data feeds to smart contracts on a blockchain network. Well, that doesn't sound impressive, but it's there. These patents, if you weren't aware, lay the groundwork for the development of sophisticated smart contracts on BSV. Why is this important to you? Well, if old Max puts so much emphasis on Stellar with Sorbonne being the sophisticated key smart contract platform for Sorbonne, then these patents definitely need to have just as much emphasis and honorable mention. This could enable the creation of a wide range of decentralized applications, and boy, oh boy, boil it, mash it, stick it in stew. Charlie Shrem of Investor Place called this. He called it since early this year, and if you guys have been following our community, whether it's here at Maximus Crypto or unfortunately the old channel, we've been talking about this. Watch out for the end of 2023 for when dApps really start standing out. But what about patents that lay the groundwork? So we talk about this wide range of decentralized applications, and this is going to include, of course, the one part of DeFi, supply chain management, and even voting systems. So BSV is even at the table when it comes to being part of supply chain. We put so much emphasis on XDC, and I still will keep my XDC. Don't get me wrong. I don't hold Morpheus Network. It's a good one. I don't hold VeChain. It's a good one. But BSV is even part of that mix, and you're going to say, how so? With more patents. Do you love how this works? So we have intellectual property and data ownership. Hear me out on this. Hopefully you enjoy the coverage. Patent, look it up if you're a nerd. US 1114981B2, as in B as in boy, and then number 2. It's a method for registering and managing intellectual property rights on a blockchain network. This other particular patent is US 2021005-1299A1. It's a method for authenticating ownership of data on a blockchain network. And this third one is US 20210143926A1. Again, there's probably a couple nerds out there. Most of you guys aren't doing this. It's a method for sharing data on blockchain network with a granular access control. Now, put it in layman's terms for you and me, and most of us, they're like, I don't understand this. These patents hold the potential to revolutionize, listen to this, how intellectual property and data are managed. So yeah, kind of like, you know, what we talk about with JASMY to a sense. Not the exact same thing. It's not a personal data locker, but it's going to help revolutionize how some of this data is managed. And if we're moving money for cross-border payments, which obviously with what we covered, that's going to happen, then you do have to potentially, you know, protect intellectual property and data and how that's managed. But if anything, revolutionize, that sounds bullish. They provide in these patents from Dr. Craig Wright a way of being able to provide a secure and tamper-proof platform for registration, authentication, sharing. Could also empower creators and businesses to better protect and listen to this. This is even part of that whole JASMY thing, if you will. I'm not saying that they're partners. Just get me, you know, hear me for a second. Allows creators, businesses to better protect and monetize their assets, not data, but their assets. Interesting. It's important to note that the significance of potential impact in regards to all what we talked about tonight All these patents, of course, are still being debated, but I'm going to show you some things that were debated by the anti-BSV people. And if anything, I'll try to debunk some of this stuff by showing you some actual articles with some proof of like, yeah, this is already solved. So whether this is being debated or not, some people, of course, believe that these things will revolutionize the blockchain industry. True, I do. I'm on board with that. Obviously, your brother Cool Cat Crypto probably feels that way. While others question their validity and practicality. But regardless of whatever side you're on, Dr. Craig Wright's patent portfolio represents a significant intellectual property asset for nChain and us, as in BSV holders. However, keep in mind, it is crucial to consider that the validity of these patents is a matter of ongoing, of course, legal dispute. Hence why we have some of the things in regards to the COPPA trial and so on. That's not over yet. Additionally, the impact of these patents on the BSV network remains to be seen. True. Only time will tell whether these technologies will be successfully implemented and have significant impact, of course, on the BSV ecosystem. Very true. Now, there's always going to be the type of person, whether you're listening to this as a BSV holder or you're a person that's like, I'm against BSV. There's always going to be the type of person that's going to say, until this is proven, I don't want to jump in. Okay, I hear you. You're going to jump in when it's confirmed, because guess what? There's no way that you're going to see the prices of like what you see right now, roughly $47 to $50. There's just no way. Once things are confirmed, I don't see it being around these prices. That, you know, as we know, supply and demand kicks in, FOMO kicks in. Hence the first video I did for BSV on this channel. You know, will we see record high FOMO? I think the answer is yes. Now, before we wrap things up, we did talk about the whole thing of smart contracts. So we just talked about the whole thing of like how BSV can do these things to contribute towards the greater, you know, positive scheme of things, like, you know, have a thriving ecosystem. I don't know of any blockchain project that doesn't want a thriving ecosystem. No kidding, right? Well, what we're going to do is I'm going to get into a few more key things of my notes. And basically, you know how we're talking about, does BTC have smart contracts? Of course, the answer is yes. Can we give examples in regards to all this? Yes. So while Bitcoin does have smart contracts, they do differ from the more complex smart contracts, for instance, that are found in, you know, the McDonald's of smart contracts, Ethereum. Here, I'm going to give you like a basic breakdown and some of the simple smart contracts that are on the BTC main chain is a scripting language that comes from BTC. You have, for instance, multi-signature transactions. A lot of this stuff sounds kind of similar to BSV, right? You have time lock transactions. They can be programmed to release at a specific time or date, making them useful for delayed payments or inheritance planning. This is where, of course, you know, some people like Michael Saylor are going to be like, well, you don't need to have super fast payments, you know. Basically, you just buy and you hold BTC long term. And for a lot of people, let's face it, you know, they don't really use BTC for cross-border payments and whatnot. You use it as a store of value, as the saying goes. How about hash-backed transactions? Now, we have kind of touched bases on this before. You got to keep in mind these are conditional transactions based on a specific hash value. It basically enables things like secret auctions and commitment schemes. Sounds kind of nuts, don't it? And of course, there is payment channels. I can imagine, you know, BTC being used as a payment channel, but there is a function to allow for off-chain transactions, of course, between two parties, increasing scalability and privacy. And this is, of course, where your BTC maxis will say, you know, Lightning Network all the way, right? Right. All right. There's more complexities. And speaking of the Lightning Network, you got to keep in mind, this is, in fact, a second layer protocol built, of course, on top of the BTC blockchain that enables faster and cheaper transactions, supposedly. Lightning Network itself can be used to create more complex smart contracts. For instance, there's a couple of examples. Atomic swaps. Some of you guys know about atomic swaps. Basically, it's a direct peer-to-peer exchange of different cryptocurrencies without the need, of course, for a third party. There's also, of course, institutional atomic swaps that we talked about in regards to what Quant has going on with, for instance, the RLN network. Remember, we talked about that in a deep dive. I'm not going to talk you guys' ears off about this. Back to the whole thing of Michael Saylor. He always talks about micropayments. So even with BTC, you do have those micropayments, do allow for the payment of very small amounts, of course, of Bitcoin, making them ideal, of course, for microblogging and streaming content. There's other examples of smart contract applications for BTC, escrow services, even supply chain. We talk about BSV. I'd be more impressed with BSV for supply chain management, especially when it comes to scalability. Can you imagine being stuck at a shipping part and waiting for, that whole transaction to happen with BTC? Give me a break. Like, that's not going to be a popularized thing. There's also DeFi smart contracts for lending platforms. We know about this, decentralized exchanges. There's prediction markets. Even on BTC, smart contracts can be used to create prediction markets. People can bet on the outcome of future events. People did that. They did it basically last night, seeing roughly, was it $4,000 or $5,000 erased from BTC in a matter of a minute or two. Yeah, so there's that. How about NFTs? Yes, there's smart contracts that can be used to create NFTs, which are unique digital assets that can be represented for artwork to collectibles. You saw the whole thing with ordinals, right? Ordi. There's, of course, limitations, as we know, when it comes to BTC and smart contracts. And we, for the most part, know about some of these things. But one of the key things that I want to share with you is this. And that is this whole concept of what is referred to as non-Turing complete. And this is where some people that are BTC proponents that go after BSV will say, yep, this is where we got you by the you-know-what, because BSV doesn't have Turing complete. I would say the answer is no, and I'm going to provide you some evidence to support that thesis. So for one, you have to keep in mind when it comes to some of these limitations, non-Turing complete, this is Bitcoin stripping language, is not Turing complete, meaning it cannot execute arbitrary programs. This limits the complexity, of course, of smart contracts that can, of course, be built on the platform. Very true. How about limited functionality? Bitcoin smart contracts are primarily focused on financial transactions and lack the ability to interact with external data or resources. Some people say that's good. Some people say that's horrible. How about scalability? Well, no kidding. BTC Maxi is going to say, yeah, we have scalability Lightning Network. Those of us who are in BSV, we're going to be like, give me a break. True Bitcoin is BSV because of scalability and other things. But scalability, the Bitcoin network is not as scalable as some other blockchains, as in BTC, which can lead to higher transaction fees, slower confirmation times for smart contracts. Yeah, no joke. But despite all these limitations, as we know, BTC does have the trust. A lot of people trust it, even though it's slow old tech. BTC smart contracts offer a secure and reliable way to automate transactions, create new types of financial instruments. That's why people say a long store of value. As the tech continues to evolve, we can expect to see even more innovative applications, even for BTC. And some people will say, well, yeah, you see that with like ordinals and so on. Okay, right. But I'm more impressed with BSV because also way more cheaper, could buy a heck of a lot more, has the same tokenomics, and so on. You guys already know about this. So basically, I want to take just a brief moment to get into why I'm putting so much emphasis on this thing called Turing complete. So here's the bottom line. Is BSV in fact Turing complete? Because it needs to get mentioned. Some people feel as though, yes, it is. No, it's not. BTC Maxi is going to say, no, it's not. Whether or not BSV is Turing complete is a complex and, of course, debated topic. Here's basically what we know. Here's the arguments. Sorry, wish I had some water next to me. I don't, but I could get up and get it, and then I have to chop it up even more. Forget it. It's okay. We'll be all right. Some people, in regards to these arguments, claim that BSV script language is powerful enough to simulate a Turing machine, which would make it a Turing complete. We're going to get more into some of the specifics. I know it still sounds a little Greek. BSV proponents argue that the lack of Turing completeness is a deliberate design choice to avoid security vulnerabilities and infinite loops. Now, back to what we shared earlier from the Justia patents list. Did we not see that Dr. Craig Wright had a few of those specific patents that we outlined specifically that answers this problem? The answer is yes, it does. He did come up with some of those patents. Even some of the other guys from his team at Enchain came out with those specific patents for that reason. And look at the publication date, December 7th, some of the other recent ones. So there is that. Is that perfect timing, especially entering into 2024, the year of the dragon, right? As we know, look at that logo, right? BSV, Satoshi Vision, the dragon. Kind of a crazy coincidence. This is all planned. I don't know. Interesting. This third point. Some believe that BSV scripting capabilities are sufficient for its intended purpose, which is primarily, listen to this, financial transactions. This is where I always think to myself before when I was new to this whole thing of BSV, why are all these BSV maxis attacking me because I hold Ripple's XRP and so on? That's why, right? And I get it. I'm still going to hold these other ones though. You can attack me all you want. It's okay. Just as long as you're respectful. Don't be disrespectful, right? Can't stand when somebody wants to attack somebody just tear a person down. You want to provide an argument, but do it in a mature way, right? All right. So basically, how about some of the arguments for BSV being non-Turing complete? This is where, of course, the BTC maxis are like, yeah, bring it on. Well, several independent analysts basically have concluded that BSV script language lacks certain key features required for Turing completeness, such as unbounded loops and recursion. Right, a few years ago. But again, what have we seen recently? Well, we have seen recently some of these patents. And I'm also going to provide you some actual articles with some evidence to support that, in my opinion, we are at Turing complete. So, BSV community itself has acknowledged that BSV is not Turing complete in official documentation. Some argue that the non-Turing completeness is beneficial for security, as it disallows malicious actors from creating infinite loops and other, of course, harmful programs. Again, this is where BTC Maxi is going to be like, yep, this is why you're never going to get the trust that BTC has. And guess what? Have we not learned anything from our history? We should learn from our history. And if the history teaches us right, yes, even BTC had these trust issues at the beginning. Everything is going to have trust issues at the beginning. But if you have somebody like Dr. Craig Wright and these other inventors from Enchain creating specific patents to create that sense of security by, I hate to say it, Star Wars reference, did we patch up that little hole in the Death Star? Yes, we did. We have a patent that answers that, if you will, right? Great. Then we don't have that vulnerability anymore, do we not? Right. How soon did that come out? Well, apparently last week. Interesting. Yes, very interesting. The current consensus basically states this. The majority of the computer science community believes that BSV is not Turing complete. Maybe they just didn't get the memo of some of the recent things that's happened. However, the debate continues and there remains some disagreement. And we have some resources that we're going to get into in regards to this whole Turing complete and why Max is putting so much of an emphasis on it, bringing it to you. Now, check this out for a second. I'm going to share this with you. And basically speaking, here it is straight from BSV blockchain. Now, on the site, it talks about this illustration of Bitcoin suitability for contracts, tokens. Basically, this was published on the 29th of June, 2022. But getting more into this specifically, it says that they were at the first session during the We Are Developers WAD World Congress in Berlin. And they showed how these founders and developers and the community people laid down the theoretical foundation for understanding Bitcoin's what? Turing completeness. Yes. And thus its suitability for building smart contracts and issuing tokens. Do you understand where old Max is going with this? Yes, I think you do. And that is the threat to Ethereum. Every blockchain, I don't care who it is, whether it's Stellar with Sorbonne, whether it's BSV with this Turing completeness, they all want to go after Ethereum's throat, right? Big time, because they realize that Ethereum dominates the overall crypto market along with BTC. Like I've always mentioned, BTC and Ethereum represent roughly 80 to 81% of the overall crypto market. If you can be a real threat to that, then you become part of that. Once you become part of that, then dominance gets alleviated. We see some other things like BSV, maybe your Ripple XRP and so on. And I understand for a lot of you guys that are against Ripple, part of the BSV community and so on, I will state this, and that is back in 2017, we did see Ripple basically, come after Ethereum, and it was ahead of Ethereum in market cap at one point. And even Ripple was number one at one point in the past as well. But back to the topic, keep in mind the suitability for building smart contracts and issuing the tokens. This guy, Mr. Mihail Senkek, software developer at Scrypt, followed Kellen Schwiller with an illustration on how he can use Bitcoin to build smart contracts and issue tokens. And here's the thing about Turing complete system. After having introduced himself and his company, Scrypt, a company that deploys smart contracts on the BSV blockchain, Sinket reversed the discussion back to the white paper. Listen to this for a second. Contrary to what the majority in the blockchain space believes, Satoshi Nakamoto described the smart contract capability of Bitcoin with this quote: "The design supports a tremendous variety of possible transactions, types that he designed years ago. Escrow transactions, bonded contracts, third-party arbitration, multi-party signature, etc., etc. If Bitcoin catches on in a big way, back to what I was talking about, creating that trust, just because BTC is like, yeah, we got the trust rate now, look at us. Also understand every single project has to go through the trust period. So back to that, right? Escrow transaction, bonded contracts, and so on, right? Bitcoin catches on in a big way. These are big things, or I should say, these are things we want to explore in the future, but they all had to be designed at the beginning to make sure they would be possible later, says Satoshi Nakamoto. Why Bitcoin has been misconceived as not Turing complete? Look at this. Sinket points out that these misconceptions arose due to the course that what later became known as Bitcoin Core took. As a Bitcoin implementation, Bitcoin Core got rid of all the original OP codes to realize a user-based and supposedly decentralized version of Bitcoin. A byproduct of this choice was that it does not scale and only supports a limited amount of transaction types. No kidding. We've been talking about this forever. Sinket stresses that this is not only, or this was not the original vision for Bitcoin and Satoshi Nakamoto, what he intended. And here's another quote. It turns out that Satoshi was actually a long-term thinker. And even before the Genesis block was mined, he actually introduced the Bitcoin script. It's really an expressive language in which you can code locking conditions for any transaction. And here's an example. The Scrypt developer provided practical examples to prove that Bitcoin is Turing complete. And again, you got to keep in mind, this is from the BSV site. And they refer to themselves not as BSV, but as Bitcoin. Applications that demonstrate Bitcoin's Turing completeness include Conway's Game of Life and a so-called Rule 110 cellular automation. Both of these applications are proven to run on BSV blockchain and thus demonstrate its Turing completeness. Sinket went on to describe Scrypt as a programming language and how it basically works. He did this because the company Scrypt translates core features of other blockchain protocols to the sole purpose of demonstrating Scrypt capabilities. The following soft forks are either already implemented on BTC, Schnorr signatures, and Taproot are proposed by Graph Root. And so those are some of the examples. And I'll read this last part. The software engineer described that script was able to run all of them natively on the BSV blockchain. So that should be your answer when it comes to this whole thing of Turing complete. And if anything, here's the quote. Here's the contract for Schnorr signatures. So we actually implemented elliptic curve arithmetic inside script system. So there's no need for oracles or anything else. It runs on the base layer. An example, layer 1. Interesting. Why so interesting? Well, I know this is not a quant video or live coverage, but remember how we talked about a global layer 1? If anything, even if you're not a quant fan, you're just like a BSV maxi, go to the recorded video section. I did the most deepest of deepest dives when it comes to the global layer 1. And if anything, what you should take in conclusion is that BSV also sits at that table. And how valuable will that be? Now, I want to jump into the next part to give you another example about this whole thing of Turing completeness. So you got to keep in mind, look at this for a second. This is from CoinGeek.com, and it mentions Dr. Wright summarizes the argument as being one of the transaction and block size limits with a true Bitcoin BSV rather than BTC being a Turing complete system. The argument, of course, from him, quote, the argument against Bitcoin being Turing complete is one of transaction and block size limits. Again, back to the whole thing of Michael Saylor and some of his quotes. Given such limits, Bitcoin would not be a Turing complete system, but Bitcoin was designed to be limited in such a manner. Hence, was the BTC system not Turing complete? Bitcoin is. Bitcoin is. BSV is, for some of you guys that are new and don't understand the lingo. So another example, and again from another source. All right. Before we wrap things up, all right, we're at towards the end. Back to Ryushi, if I'm pronouncing that right. I want to give him a shout out on the video. I'll tag him. If anything, I'm going to give him a follow too. This is the second time I use some of his research. It says Craig Wright, referenced as, of course, Satoshi. Let's double check my settings. In Chinese university textbook, listen to this. We covered this a long time ago on the old channel, but I want to re-share this. References Satoshi in Chinese university textbooks used in some of China's leading university states, mainland China, right? Not Taiwan. The textbook was authored by American economist Frederick Mishk, member of the Federal Reserve of Governors of the United States. So again, go back and watch my global layer 1 video. You could tie all that in too. If you want to nerd it out, most of us won't, and that's okay. No, there are other school textbooks worldwide, like universities such as Princeton, MIT, and other well-known colleges that reference Dr. Craig Wright as the creator of Bitcoin. Wow. The Chinese economics textbook used in some of Chinese leading universities states that the notorious, which if you know what notorious means by definition in Webster's dictionary, collegiate dictionary, notorious literally means well-known for something bad. I don't know if people know that. But Dr. Craig Wright is Satoshi Nakamoto, the creator of Bitcoin. On page 11 of the Chinese translated economics book, quote, The Economics of Money, Banking, and Financial Markets, 6th edition, the N-Chain chief scientist was described roughly as an Australian financial geek who founded Bitcoin, a global encrypted electronic payment currency. The book was originally written in English and has been translated to Chinese. And on page 11, the authors say Wright is an, quote, Australian financial geek. I remember Cool Cat talking about this like a year or more ago, who created the peer-to-peer electronic cash network. The textbook was approved and translated by the Wuhan University Press and one of China's largest educational institutions. The Department of Finance of the Economics and Management School, EMS, uses, of course, the text. EMS describes itself as one of the largest economics schools in China, as well as the largest school under the WHU administration. The school's history dates back to 1893, when the Zhisheng Institute was established with a division for business studies, the earliest business education institution in the country. Now, here's some key people. I think this is, Frederick Mishk, member of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors of the United States. Here's Dr. Craig Wright, all these people, right? Part of the BSV Association. All there. All right. Now, what I want to do now, before we wrap it up, check this out. 1 second. Make sure I'm good on this. Yeah. Yeah, check this out. So here's his book. All right. The Economics of Money, Banking, and Financial Markets. Look at this for a second. I will come out of the frame. I'll bring you to the next particular page. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's zoom in on this. Let's see it nice and big. Just in case you're Boomer Effort Sooner sitting on his couch. You might be gone for the night. Anyway. Look at this. And look at this. The Economics of Money, Banking, Financial Markets. They open this thing up. Let's take you over here. I know this is all in, Mandarin. But when you get further down, I know it might be kind of hard to see. But look what's underlined here. Sorry if I'm having connection problems. It says Bitcoin, and it underlines the big little thing. And right underneath that, Craig Stephen Wright. Yes. And it's kind of blurry, but it's right there. So, wow. That's big. And if anything, we're always trying to connect the dots. And for me, I have totally decided to take BSV way more serious than I did before. Before I was just like, I'll buy a handful of these. Okay. Not financial advice, but this is actually what I'm doing. So for me, it's to DCA more into it, whether it's like a couple a month or a handful a month, do whatever you guys got to do, right? It's never financial advice, just providing information. I want to state this. I do not know when this thing will go to the moon and so on. I have stated before that if we get a full victory for Dr. Craig Wright with the COPPA trial and so on, and all these royalties and everything, it recognizes that with these smart contracts and so on, that the world declares that Dr. Craig Wright is in fact Satoshi Nakamoto, that you will see, like I showed in that first video, record high FOMO of more than anything in the history of crypto, in my humble opinion. That makes sense. Mainstream outlets report on it, not just crypto Twitter and so on. Okay. Will report on it because, as we know, mainstream covers either the good news or the bad news. This would be huge news. Okay. So the way I look at it is, I don't know if it's going to be 2024, 2025 and beyond. This is honestly how I'm going to treat BSV. I'm going to treat it kind of like how Michael Saylor claims that he's going to be treating his BTC. And for me, it's a long buy and hold, like really, really long. Like I look at BSV as like, hey, I'm coming into BTC and it's 2013. I also mentioned this kind of like what I do with Quant. Like, Quant is a second chance at Bitcoin in 2013 or roughly around $100. But this is BSV we're talking about, and it's roughly 47 to 50. It's gone up a little bit, and pulled back and so on. So you buy it, you hold it, and of course you pay attention to what's going on in the market and so on. But I really think that this could very well be, like as the saying goes, the real true Bitcoin. I understand we got to get to the point of trust. We need more of that mass adoption and so on. But how cool is it to be able to invest in something, that still isn't quite there yet, but has the tech? Even if you don't like the idea of Craig Wright being Satoshi Nakamoto, and you're like, it's Hal Finney, or, it's a group of people. Put that aside for a second and recognize that the tech is amazing. Talking about infinite scalability, just about. Talk about these block size. There's no cap on that. Talk about, for instance, being a real threat to the traditional payment structures of the world. Everything we outline in regards to, a global layer one protocol. You know, not even really having to rely completely on other blockchains and oracles and so on. It's a true threat to Ethereum. I mean, what's there not to like? Even if a person's like, you know, what is the debate? Honestly, I think for everybody, before we wrap this up, I think the main debate of why people don't get into BSV is for one simple reason, and you know it's true. It's because you're like, nah, fake Toshi. That's what's preventing you from this? Look at the tech, for crying out loud. That's just me. I'm not going to talk you guys into anything. We present information, do the deep dives, and so on. Shout out to everybody who has BSV. And I want to give the utmost praise and thanks to our brother Cool Cat Crypto. Because you want to know something? I think me and a lot of other people didn't take him too serious at first. And then there was just something about BSV all the time. He was so passionate about it all the time. I thought to myself, all right, you know, if this guy's this passionate about BSV, I'll look more into this thing. And I was so glad that I did. My last bag was roughly in the $25, $27 area. I doubt I'll ever be able to see that again. This is a massive crash, but we will continue to cover BSV.